Chris, you're right. You're 100% right. 248-539-9797. Someone please swoop in and protect the Pistons from themselves. Pistons need a young superstar to turn the corner, turn this around. Sorry, that's from BG. I mean, let's face it. The only way to get better when you're the Pistons, in the Pistons situation, is pretty much through the draft. That's how Golden State did it. Golden State was no destination, and they had spectacular drafts, and they turned themselves into a destination. Next thing you know, they got Kevin Durant, they got Boogie, and they got everybody wants to play for them. So you have to knock it out of the park with the draft. You can't go Stanley, Ellenson, Kennard and pass on Devin Booker and Donovan Mitchell. And look, drafting is really hard. And, you know, good teams, good GMs can make mistakes. But when you consistently make them, you're not a good GM. And when you consistently make them, you're not a good organization. And, you know, there's a degree of forgiveness for a miss here or there, but those are major swings and misses. 248-539-9797. Now, they'd be a better basketball team for sure. Again, if there's legs to this rumor and the Pistons really could get Mike Conley for Reggie in a first, but it would make them better, but to what end? It just gets... Remember, we talk about you're going down a dead-end road, and if you're going faster down the dead-end road, you're getting further away from going back to the intersection where you need to go back to and start over again.
Yeah, I mean, the problem is, and King hit on it earlier, the Pistons didn't hit on the draft picks they had when they had not great draft picks. They weren't like lottery picks, but they had higher picks, and they passed on guys that end up being, you know, all-stars and rookies of the year and stuff like that. The Warriors, all the credit they get, and they deserve the credit. But Steph Curry was 7th pick overall. Klay Thompson was the 11th pick overall. The one they really got lucky on was Draymond Green, who was selected in the 2nd round. But when you start off with those picks, the 7th and 11th pick, and they end up being some of the best shooters in the history of the league.
Yeah, if they redraft, they go first.
Yeah.
You know? 248-539-9797. Jacob in Plymouth. Hi, Jacob.
Hey, guys. How are you today?
Okay.
I am sick of trading away assets to try and be the 6th, 7th, or 8th seed in the NBA playoffs. I want to see them make some picks and trade away Blake Griffin. I'm sorry. I feel like I'm going to sneeze, guys. Sorry. I want to see them trade away Blake Griffin and pick up picks. I want to see them actually turn this team around. It doesn't do anything for me to constantly watch them be a mediocre team. Make this team a real legitimate team and try it that way.
Yeah, I mean, if you can get a taker, the Free Press had a thing where they talked to scouts around the league and asked, what is the trade value for Blake Griffin? And I'm going to read this verbatim. At one end, an Eastern Conference scout didn't express much interest in Griffin, saying his post-up game isn't made for today's game. A Western Conference scout disagreed vehemently. He said the Pistons could expect to land 2 first-round picks if they were to make Griffin available. I mean, given the choice, if somebody, and look, this is just a scout's opinion, but if somebody wanted Blake and you can get 2 firsts back, it becomes the no-brainer of all time. You move Blake for the 2 firsts, then you start unloading everybody. You try and get any assets you can, and you would never even consider the Conley deal. But and here's the other thing I'm not going to do, Jacob and Gator and everybody else, is get mad because the Pistons are talking about potentially adding. Just because they're talking about adding doesn't mean they're serious about it. They're creating a market. If they've gotten a serious call about Blake, or somebody says, hey, are you interested in moving Blake? Like, yeah, let me call you back. They get the Conley trade talk room. Then they call them back and they say, all right, what's your interest in Blake? And they're like, well, we kind of wondered if you were interested in selling cheap. And you go, well, we're trying to win now, but what would you offer? You don't want to tell people, like Avila tells everybody, strangely, exactly what he's going to do. If this is an effort by Ed Stefanski and Tom Gores and Dwayne Casey to create a market for a sell-off, it could be effective.
Well, get people talking, and the trade deadline is Thursday at 3 p.m., so I'm with you. I'm not going to get upset about anything until trades are made. it's rare you hear about the trade that wasn't made. Sometimes you do, but it's rare that you do. If they make a move, look, it's quite possible they can make moves we're not going to agree with. But I'll get angry at that point. I'm not going to get angry about the discussion of it because I think it's worthy of discussion.
Yep.
And this Conley thing is interesting. It is interesting.
But you start to talk like this, and you just never know when Memphis says, screw it, we just want from out for another contract. We'll do it for Reggie.
Without giving up,
Eli and Rochester, even then, though, you'd have the contract. But Eli and Rochester. Hi, Eli.
Hey, fellas. Thanks for taking my call. Love the show.
Thank you.
Hey, so let me just preface this by saying I would prefer them to be sellers, not buyers, by the deadline. But I was kind of just thinking about them being buyers, and I came up with this scenario. I wanted to know what you guys thought. So if we're thinking about moving Jackson and possibly a first round for a guy like Conley, why don't we give a call to maybe the Wizards and see what they would want for a guy like John Wall, who publicly said he doesn't want to be there, who they publicly said that nobody's safe on the team. Because the team, I think, the Pistons would be better with Wall, not great, but better. And I think that would tremendously help maybe even getting fans at the games because he's a little bit of a bigger name. I just wonder what you guys thought about that.
Well, I'd start with this. I mean, he's younger, too. I would never, though, make a trade because somebody's a bit of a bigger name. That would be, I think that, I get that the business aspect is part of it. It's not for me. If I were a GM, an owner, a coach, this wouldn't even fit into my thinking.
I mean, you don't think he's overall would be better for the team than a guy like Conley?
He might be. I mean, they've come out and said they're not trading him, but doesn't mean
Wall's a guy who averages more assists per game. They're comparable in points per game, but John Wall this year he's only played 32 games.
He's shot been hurt, right?
Yeah, he shot 30% from the 3-point line, and I think Conley was at over 35%. I mean, there's a big difference there, and I think there's some baggage that comes with John Wall too.
When's the last time John Wall played? And when's he supposed to be back? That's part of it. But I also...
Well, he played... he hasn't played. He hasn't played since December 26th.
Yeah. They said they wouldn't trade him, but...
Against the Pistons, oddly.
The Pistons, by the way, have gotten a call. Again, another report that the Lakers have called about Reggie Bullock, but Detroit was not impressed with whatever they were offering back. Bullock's in the last year of a $2.5 million contract. That was the other call they've gotten, but they really don't have any players that people are going, oh, we want to go get this guy, want to go get that guy.
But I do like to hear that there's action. Because if there's action here on a Monday, meaning yesterday, prior to the trade deadline on Thursday, I would stand to reason that more calls are going to come in. And they don't have high-end players that other teams would covet, but do they have those guys on the roster that other teams would want? Is there, not that you'd get much in return, but like a Reggie Bullock or a Langston Galloway, do they have any kind of value at all? Are teams clamoring for
be a
Luke
Kennard
there, but maybe somebody wants a reclamation project with Stanley Johnson, although he had a great game last night, which again is kind of frustrating. They do have players like that, those second and third tier players. And if I got to think, if somebody called and asked for Blake Griffin, you got to listen. You have to listen.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'd listen. I think it's pretty interesting that there's very wildly different opinions on Blake Griffin's value. From one, in that free press story, one scout says not really, not for today's NBA, and the other says 2 first-round picks.
You definitely listen for Blake. But as far as acquiring a superstar, we talked about this for years, right? No, Detroit's not a destination for free agents, right? The only way you can get one is draft one or trade for one. So they went out and they thought, they traded for Blake Griffin. Now there's talk of Mike Conley. The difference is he's not a superstar. Neither is John Wall anymore, and these guys are making superstar money. Okay, you only do that for top 10 guys. Kawhi, Anthony Davis, when those guys, if they ever become available, those are the guys you do it for. You can't do it for Mike Conley Jr.'s. You can't do it for John Walls. You're setting the franchise back. You already got one guy in Blake Griffin. Now you got to build around with the young guys. Unless you're getting one of those top guys, a Klay Thompson, a top 10 type guy, you just can't do it. And unfortunately, that's the only way that the Pistons can get superstar players is trade for him.
Do you think it's a consensus in Detroit that even though people love Blake, they'd all say trade him if you could get an offer?
Yes.
I think majority, yeah.
248-539-9797. Ticket text 97136. Let's go to...
Which the sad thing is, if you were to trade Blake Griffin, how much worse would this team be?
Oh, well, yeah. I mean,
we're
it's
talking
an acknowledgement that you're
throwing in the towel for years down the road. Another 5 years before you think you can reap anything.
The only trades I want to hear about is us getting rid of contracts, getting expiring contracts, and acquiring draft capital. That's from B Serious. For Jamie Portier, trading Reggie for anyone is an upgrade. It is, but you'd be sunk financially. Like you'd be the Conley. They'd be better, but it would cost.
You're as sunk as the owner wants you to be sunk. He said it. He's okay with going over the luxury tax.
Oh, he is.
When you come out in public and say that for the right deal, okay, you're on record.